Welcome back, everyone. Well, this is session 8 of season 2, and in this session, we are going to first of all introduce something cool, as I told you. And but before we go on, I just noticed something here. As you can see, this heading that we have here is pretty nice, but these two, they seem to lose some style maybe. And let's see what the reason is. And if we click on this heading here, we can see that it says general form. The heading which is inside this general form should have these CSS properties, and these CSS properties are being applied to that. But this one, if we hit inspect element, it does have the heading class, but it's no longer directly inside our general form. Because if you take a look at our CSS code here and we control F and search for heading, you can see here that we have selected these heading, and we have selected those headings they are directly inside general form. So we can remove this character, hit control S to save that, and come back here, hit refresh, and as you can see now, everything's fixed and everything's okay. And about the margins here, the margins could be improved pretty much. And for example, I have margin 10 pixel to this, and I've applied margin top 10 30 pixel to that, so it has 10 pixel from everywhere but 30 pixel from top. So if we remove that, it does seem to look a little better, but let's change that margin top to 20. So let back, and I think it's a little better. But anyway, the margins, the way that we have applied the margins could be so much improved, but I think it's fine, and it's not that big of a deal to go ahead and fix that. So what was the cool thing that I wanted to introduce you? Well, I wanted to introduce a website called uiverse.io. So this website is full of snippets, and we can use these snippets in our projects. For example, we have here a button, and we have designed a button. We tried to design a beautiful button, but if we go to this website, it has so many different categories. Let's see where the categories are. Maybe it's in browse section. Yes, the categories, for example, buttons, inputs. For example, let's go inside this buttons category, and as you can see, there are a lot of different beautiful buttons that we can use in our project. And I want to select this one, this button. So as you can see, now that I have opened it, it has two sections, one HTML section and one CSS section. It's basically telling us that you create a button and give it a class of primary button, and with the div class button borders, yes, and this will be the CSS code. So if you copy these codes in your project, you will have that. So let's go back to our codes here and copy this CSS. So this section is our button, the button that we have, and we have created a class called btn container and btn for that, but for this it has other classes. Hit control C, hit control V, and if you take a look at this, you see that the indentation doesn't seem right, because if you take a look at our code, let's see, we have space from the outside at the indentions, but the indentions here is not great. Let's clean the font family, because we have a font family of our own, and there is actually a way for auto indentation. The way that I'm doing that is not great. We will see how to fix these things with auto indentation, but for now I just fixed the indentation with the old way, with the good old ways. And let's go inside our HTML section, and inside our HTML section we need to copy the HTML codes. So this would be our HTML code. So get back here, sorry, where was the codes here? And here we have a div class btn container, and just instead of that we have this one now. But instead of Yes, and let's apply this type submit to that as well. If you forgot what was that type submit, well, we have two buttons. One button that actually submits the form. When you click on that, it sends the data for backend. The type of those buttons are submit, but we have other buttons in our forms that we may not want to submit the form with that button. For example, let's say here, let's imagine we have a button here. Let's this button is TMP, and let's put the type on button, because the default one is actually submit if you do not write any type. Well, this temp will no longer, it does not do anything. So let's come back here, hit refresh. This is the button save. If we click on this save, you can see that the form got submitted. So but if you click on that temp, you see that nothing happens. So that's the type of submit that we need to have for the button. So this is our button. We actually used a button from that snippets, and there are lots of different buttons there. And actually in this button borders, let's see, we can actually give it a text align center for this. If we give a text align center, okay, why when I applied this text align center, this button did not go to the center? So that's something that we need to debug. So because yeah, it has some CSS, and also there are some CSS properties in this button that we haven't seen so far. But don't worry about those, we will cover throughout the course. If you saw anything that you did not know, for example, you may don't understand this calc, you may don't, but some of the properties you know about them already. For example, this position absolute, but this width fit content or height fit content, these things something that you might not be familiar with. So anyway, we need to now centerize this button that we have, and in order to centerize this, let's first understand why this text align center did not work. For example, let's imagine that we have a div, okay, and the div has a class of btn container, okay, and we have a temporary button inside that, a temp button, and we can actually go ahead and select this btn container in our CSS section here, and we give it a text align of center, okay, text align of center. Let's come back here, hit refresh, and as you can see, everything works just fine. We have a div here. The div, it shows us that the div is occupying from this blue area is showing us the how much space it's occupying, and it's from the very left to the very right, this btn container. And when we apply text align center, well, of course the temp or anything that is inside this one will go and be at the center of this div. And of course, if we change the text align center to right or to left, it will be changed as well. But the point is, this text align center, well, this div has a block display, right? It occupying from the very left to the very right. But this button is not, it does not have a block display. It has an inline block display. So that's why we can control its position. For example, if this button had a block display of block, we can see that this text align center is not being applied to this button. Well, and of course it's true, and that is exactly what should happen. For example, this div is occupying from the very left to the very right, and now this button has a block display, and so does this button. This button is also occupying from the very left to the very right, but button has a width of fit content by default, which means that's why we do not see that this temp btn goes from the very left to the very right with our eyes. But if we hover the mouse on that, we can see that this div is actually occupying from the very left to the very right, and the width is on just with fit content, and that's why we see this result. So that's why this text align center is not working, and of course it's not working because the display is block and the width is on fit content. For buttons, the default width is on fit content, so that's why we have this problem. So if we remove this display block, and now everything is okay. So for this problem, in order to solve this problem, there are many different ways, but I choose to use a solution with flex display. Display flex is very good and very great. If we paste this div here, this button borders, inside this btn container, and this btn container of course has a text align center. If we come back here, hit refresh, it doesn't work. We do not see this at the center, of course, because it's the same story. This div that we have here is just like that temp btn that we had when the display was on block. So that's why of course nothing happens. So in these circumstances, you can always use display flex, display of flex, and we can set the justify content on center, and now it works, and now we have our button at the center just like we wanted. So this with fit content is actually a little tricky, and be careful using these advanced CSS stuff. For example, this thing that we had, why understanding this section was a little hard if you compare to everything that we had throughout this course. Understanding this like past 5 minutes or 3 minutes was a little hard. At least that's what I believe. It's because we are using advanced CSS concepts, a advanced concept like with like this with here. Let's come back with fit content that it was using. Fit content. These with fit content height, these are advanced CSS concepts, so that's why when we use them it's become a little hard to understand, but with good amount of practice these things will become very easy for you. So this is it. This is the button that we used in our project, and we can go ahead actually fix the colors for this. And for the black color, I'm going to use our primary. So I highlight this one, hit Control D, and to select all of them, and I say var, and this would be our primary. Okay, come back here, hit refresh, and as you can see this is our primary. And instead of the red color, we can use, let's go to our palette and see what we can use. We can use our secondary, or we can use our tertiary. So instead of this red color here, so I can highlight this, hit Control D to find all of them, and hit var, and actually this would be our tertiary. So come back here, hit refresh, and now we are using the palette. But where is this red color is coming from? We changed everything, but still that red color remains. And why is that? Let's find out. I don't know why. Where is that? It is actually a shape. Yeah. So that's why we have this problem. This image that is being used here is actually, it's not a color. So you can see when we hover that, it has a background image. Yeah, it's using a background image. So that's why we have this problem here. We need to actually change the color of this image, or actually use an image of our own. So let's save this image, save as. So we can go ahead in our maybe in our desktop here, and I call it btn. So that's why I don't like this button anymore, because it's been written in a complicated way. So for example here, let's see, it's using a background image. So that's why I no longer like this snippet anymore, because I just saw how it's been written. It's hard to customize. A good code, one of the signs of a good code is actually to be easy to customize. For example, now that we wanted to change the color, you see that since this is using an image, we have so many problems. So instead of that, let's clean this background image, and it's using a background color. So come back here, hit refresh. So see, that's the problem. So now I have this button SVG that we have here. We can go ahead and actually change it. So let's open that with VS Code. Sorry, this is our VS Code. Let's open this SVG. So okay, and in SVG, at least the good news about SVG is that we can change the colors if you want to. So you can see there are two colors used in that. We can use the colors of our own palette. So for the red, we are going to use our tertiary. This is it. And for the black, we are going to use our primary. So this is it. Hit Control V and close this one. And now open this. We did change that, so why it did not work? So come back here again. Control U to see the codes. So maybe we did not save that. Okay, BTN SVG. Maybe this is another BTN SVG inside our HTML form. Yes, this is the one. So this is the one that we actually go ahead and we changed the values for that. So this is what we are going to use. So come back here. So I no longer need that. Let's delete that. And inside this HTML form here, and inside this we have this BTN SVG here, and inside our CSS we can actually inside this HTML forms we can create a new folder, call it images, maybe images, and let's move this BTN SVG, sorry, images, inside this images, move. So now we have that, and inside this style.css here, for the background image, previously it was using something from this website, from this URL, but now we can actually go ahead and clean this, and so we can go ahead and actually say, hey, you need to go you need to get out of this folder, because we are now currently inside CSS, inside this style.css. You need to come back from style.css, then go inside this images folder, and inside this images folder you need to attach this btn bg.svg. So come back here, hit refresh, and now we finally fix that. So that's why I believe this is not a great code. It looks very nice, it's awesome, but it's not very great, because it's not easy to customize. So from now on, if we want to change this or change our palette or change anything, we need to change the color here as well. So this is it. That's enough for this session. This video is getting a little long, but the thing that I wanted to do in this session, in this season, in this session, is to introduce you this website, this cool website. And it's true that it was a little hard to customize this one, but it has a lot of great buttons. Even if one of them don't turn out to be super great, but it has so many great snippets for us. And we changed the button from this snippet. We can actually go ahead and change the inputs as well. If you like, you can go ahead and change the inputs. For now we have used some inputs here, but you can see that it has so many other inputs that it has designed that input. You can see now, see these are the result. This is some inputs. You can see this one. You can copy the codes in your project. So this is a website full of snippets, full of ideas for you, and some of them are actually very advanced, and they have used advanced CSS concepts in order to design such a beautiful thing. So the thing that I want you to know and remember, if you went to this website and saw a lot of different CSS properties that you didn't know what these CSS properties do, and don't worry, because you haven't had a advanced CSS course. So you can, if you are interested in designing these beautiful things, if you're interested in these type of stuff, you want to understand, wow, this is so beautiful how they have designed it. If you are interested in that, it's a good idea to go and see my advanced CSS course. And for now, at the time right now, this course is not recorded, but I will record this advanced CSS course for sure. And so this is it. That's enough for this session. And if you want it, you can actually go ahead and change the inputs, but I do not change the inputs. I think this is just fine. And our form is now completely created, but the only thing that is remaining, we can use a plugin for this birthday, for this date picker if you want to. And it's not a bad idea to see that how we can use plugins and import plugins in our project. So in next session we are going to work on this birthday section, and we want to have a date picker. So this is it. That's enough for this session.